And we're live.
Woohoo!
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Soulful Sips. I'm Alyssa.
I'm Julie.
And I'm MJ.
MJ, welcome.
Woohoo! Thank you. Where do I start?
Do you want to just give yourself a brief introduction?
Sure. So, my name is MJ. I currently live in New York and I work in finance. And I came from Toronto before moving to New York about 9 months ago. And I'm friends with Julie, and that's how I got to meet
Yay.
Alyssa.
Yay! Welcome to the
Woohoo.
podcast. It's very exciting to have you
Thank
here.
you. Very excited to be here.
So, what is our drink for today as a part of the sips part of our social?
Yeah, what are we all sipping on? I feel like, Julie, you probably have the most
Interesting. drink?
appropriate sip. Yeah.
It's almost gone. Yeah, my husband doesn't like the fact that I drink ice wine so quickly, but I am drinking ice wine. It is my favorite. I don't even know if you can classify it as wine. I don't know too much about it, but it's just so freaking good.
I love it. Ice wine is wine. I think what makes them ice wine is they extract grapes when they're frozen.
And that's what makes them so sweet.
Yeah,
So it's so.
exactly. Yeah. But hangovers from ice wine are also another level.
Oh.
So wish you very much luck next
I've
day.
actually never gotten a hangover from ice wine. Does this mean like it's meant to be? Maybe I should just continue on with it.
Maybe you're just a heavyweight and Julie's just chugging
I believe
it down.
it.
She's like, I'm
I
unaffected.
believe it. Heavyweight checks out.
Oh man.
Yeah.
How about MJ? What are you drinking?
So it's in the morning for me. It's in the evening for you guys. And I'm drinking chia seeds and water because I'm a big texture person. So I like chewing on things. As weird as that sounds. So this is my way to hydrate myself in the morning.
Oh.
Hey, good for you. Good source of fiber.
Exactly. How about you, Alyssa?
And I am just having plain old water. I was contemplating having some iced coffee just because I can really drink iced coffee at any time of the day, but I figured that probably wouldn't be the best idea.
Cool. So with that, how about Alyssa, you go for it.
Virtual cheers,
virtual
guys.
cheers. Yeah, and so this is your second time meeting Alyssa, the first being pretty much when we were introducing this podcast to each other, really, since things have moved so quickly. And of course, in the speed of getting to know each other very fast, we want to try and just discover each other's MBTI. And I think this will be a very exciting episode or a very exciting topic because it's so prevalent in Korea. So before you guys go ahead and guess each other's MBTI, I'll just do a super quick rundown as to what it is. So the MBTI stands for the Myers-Briggs type indicator, and it actually characterizes you into 16 different personality types. So each personality types get 4 letters, and each of the 4 letters have 2 different combinations. So to run you through, the first one is extroversion E versus introversion I. So it's where do you get your energy? From the inner world or the outer world? And we'll get into that a little bit. The second one is sensing versus intuition. So that's S versus N. Not very intuitive, but yeah, that's an N. And this is where you take in information. So do you take it into your direct 5 senses of touching, feeling, sensing, all of that tactile stuff? Or do you think about it in patterns, possibilities, and systems and underlying context? The third letter is a T, thinking, versus F, feeling. So how do you make decisions? Is it through the logical analysis of things, or is it through people and their values and emotions? The last one is J versus P, judging versus perceiving. So this is how you organize your life, whether it's through structure and planning or flexibility and adaptability. So, with this explanation underway, I would love if MJ and Alyssa, you could just go ahead with just guessing each other's MBTI. Maybe Alyssa, we'll start with you because you had a few theories.
Yeah, I had a few theories, and they're all probably um, not the right ones because I couldn't.
Wait, can I just
Wait, Julie,
say
do you want to
that?
share? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that us trying to guess each other's MBTI can potentially delegitimize this personality test because if you're able to, or actually legitimize it because if you're able to guess the other person's MBTI after meeting each other for like 2 hours, then maybe it has some truth to it. It's not just like a bogus internet online personality test that people not familiar with it might think it is.
So, no pressure.
Just wanted to make that comment because we're trying to guess each other's like fundamental
Yeah, I mean,
personalities.
I'm a pretty strong believer in MBTI, and I feel like once I find out someone's MBTI, I either understand their past motivations more if I've known them for a while, or if I'm just meeting them, I like understand who they are as a person more. So, with that said, MJ, I think okay, let's go from the beginning. So, E versus I feel like you're an E because what I sense from you is not necessarily, it's not going to sound right. I was going to say not necessarily a ton of privacy. That doesn't mean that you're just like laying it all out there. I'm just saying, I just feel like personality wise, there was not really like an awkward phase that we went through. I feel like when we met each other virtually and kind of started talking about this whole podcast and collaboration thing. So that made me feel like you exerted more E energy for, okay, for S versus N, so it's the sensing versus intuition, I feel like you lean more N to me because I know when it came to certain topics that might have been a little bit more controversial, like you were very open to kind of diving into those things with me. Where I know Julie, who was an S, initially was a little bit more hesitant when it came to those things. So that's my small indicator that you might lean more N. T versus the last two are the ones that I'm a little bit black box right now just because of the short amount of time that we've known each other. So T versus F. Okay, one thing that I will say is that there are like ratios, right? So just because someone ends up being one or the other doesn't mean that they're completely that. But you're in finance. So part of me wants to say you might lean more T but have a lot of F as well in your percentages. And then J versus P, I feel like you're a J. So that leaves us with ENTJ is what I think you are.
Are you the most confident about J because there is no explanation as to why J over P? There's like no way MJ is
The fact that you
P.
picked up on that. Well, I'm trying to think about anecdotally. So I know that you had study abroad experience. I know you're originally from Toronto. Now you live in New York. I know that you from from what Julie has told me, I know that you've been doing a lot of career and self development and a lot of studying. So I feel like all of those factors could make you lean more J. But yeah, that's going off of the limited knowledge
Okay,
that I
okay.
have.
Not to put you on the spot, but I was just curious. Yeah.
So what do we end up with? ENTJ.
Yeah, so that puts us at extroversion, intuition, thinking, and judging. But let me consult
Miss Mr. G.
my friend ChatGPT. Individuals with the ENTJ type are characterized by their confidence, strategic thinking, and leadership skills. There's some key words like assertive, ambitious, natural decision makers, skilled at organizing and managing people, enjoy challenging themselves and others to strive for excellence, but they can come off as overly controlling or insensitive to others' feelings. So, with that in mind, MJ, how do you react?
So I will give you a score of 75%, which is a fail in Asian, standards. I'm just kidding. It's great job. It's 75% correct. I would say the T is the only letter that's
Mm,
kind of more strongly on the other side for me. I'm a strong F.
okay.
So I'm an ENFJ,
Well, and
but
those
the
were the
other
one
ones and
that
the
was the one that I
descriptions were
was a little bit
pretty bang on.
like maybe you could lean more T based off of your finance background, but I was like, but you're heavy, but I feel like there's a lot of F in there. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll take that. I mean, I get it. C's don't get degrees, but hey, three,
Yeah.
3 out of 4 ain't bad.
Yeah, and the description that ChatGPT like pulled up actually does seem to describe, how I approach work. So it's to some extent, accurate or
Yeah. I think
representative
just like
of
high
how
level,
I
that's what I
approach
got
work.
from meeting you right off the bat. It's just like your ambition. And those were kind of like the overarching personality traits that I feel like you really exuded. But okay, ENFJ.
But great job, great job.
And so yes, great job. For those who are listening, the F does put a twist into what the whole MBTI for MJ looks like. So this means that they're characterized by their warmth, empathy, and social skills. They tend to be outgoing, optimistic, and highly attuned to others' emotions and needs. Some other keywords are communicators, persuaders, a strong sense of values and ethics, enjoy helping others, inspiring and motivating as well. But they may struggle with setting boundaries and taking care of their own needs. So this, I as a friend, I would also say describes MJ quite well.
One thing that stands out to me from this description is making a positive impact in the world, because that's very closely related to the type of work that I do. It's impact oriented finance. I'm very, very surprised at like how accurate this seems to describe me. But it also describes me in a very positive light and not a lot of the other side of things. So I'm also happy to get into those as we talk about how this impacts our day to day lives.
Oh, interesting. There's also an auxiliary to MBTI, which is a fifth letter, and it's a dash A or a dash T. So that's an assertive or turbulent type. So assertive generally tends to mean how you're quite confident in yourself and the decisions that you make. And it sounds like just simply a strength, but it does come with its downsides in being able to make decisions a little too quickly, overlooking some details. And the T for turbulent means that you are less confident in yourself and the decisions that you make. But uh, the pros that come with this is the detail oriented, the caring for others. Alyssa, what would you guess MJ's auxiliary to be?
Ooh, I would have guessed. So now that I know it's ENFJ, I feel like MJ would be A, assertive, ENFJ
So that's a
A.
fail. I'm just kidding.
Damn
So
it.
I actually toggle between
Mm.
TNA. No, I'm just kidding, Alyssa. You're doing really well. I just toggle between TNA very often. So when I first took the test in 2020, I was
Mhm.
T, and then when I took the test relatively recently, earlier this year, I was A. So I think depending on where I am, especially in terms of my career and my personal life, then I go back between TNA.
I've found the same thing happening to me as well with the T and the A. Like it's very much situation dependent.
Yeah, situation dependent and like mood dependent, like
Mhm.
assertive and
Mhm.
confidence. I feel like they're more dependent on your mood.
Yeah, yeah, and like the phase you are in your life. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Very cool. MJ, your turn to guess Alyssa's. Okay, I'm at the edge, yeah, of my seat. Sorry,
In
go ahead.
anticipation of my attempt at psychologically analyzing Alyssa.
I have a feeling you're gonna get it all
100%.
right, and then I'm gonna look like a bit of an asshole for getting
No,
this
no,
right.
no, no. Wait. So I usually have a decent track record, but I will say it's usually based on personal interactions. and the ability to
Mm.
ask some probing questions. So, do I get the ability to ask you some lead up questions, or is it just plain guesses?
Um, I'm going to say no because I wasn't given that opportunity.
Fair is fair. Okay, okay. All right.
I'm just kidding. You can ask if you want. You can ask if you want.
Or
That's
was that a probing question in and of itself?
Ooh, the plot thickens.
oh
Let me take a cut and then see if I'm way off.
yeah. If not, I'll give you like 3 questions if you want
Oh,
like that
perfect. That's all
chance.
I need because okay, okay. E versus I, my first guess would have been E, but you already told me that you and Julie identify on the introverted spectrum. So that's an easy one. Um, but I will say that my perception of you being on more on the extroverted side came from just like the ease of conversation that we had, just like you said, just being able to talk about things right off the bat and then just bouncing off of each other's energy pretty decently. So that was my guess. And then between N and S, so the question is, do you daydream often?
That's a pretty dead giveaway.
I told you. Okay, okay.
Yes.
I wonder what you could be between N and S.
Yeah. Yeah. What would that?
So I'm gonna guess E N, and then between T and F, I'm gonna ask you when you're watching a sad movie and the person you're watching it with cries. Are you the person to ask why are you crying?
Can I call time for a second? I thought you were gonna take a stab and then ask 3 questions. Is this like
Oh,
the flow or no? I just
you want me to fail first and then just kind of claw back
yeah.
my failures? Okay, I could do that. I could do that. Okay, fine. So E N, I'm gonna guess T J.
We guessed the same thing for each other.
Yes, we did. I'm gonna actually guess ENFJ. Sorry, ENFJ.
So you're simultaneously right and wrong.
Oh, so one of the answers was right.
So funny enough, the very first time I actually took MBTI, I was an ENFJ.
Okay.
And yeah. I am now an INFJ.
We
Mm.
converted.
I like guessed the first one
hmm
right, and then like totally just got the wrong answer.
Yeah, you talked
Yeah.
yourself out of it. Yeah.
Damn it!
So I would say, yeah. So I'd say you pass.
How generous. 75%.
What
My
what
mom would disagree.
what made you change? I know. All our parents would disagree. What made you change at last minute from T to F? Curious.
Because of the potential topics that we discussed in terms of wanting to talk
Mm,
about on these episodes, I feel like it comes from a place of almost empathy and almost just thinking from another person's perspectives on the emotional wavelength versus like from a logical side. So I thought that could be a giveaway. And then Jay, I mean, like I've seen you plan, like I feel like also like if Julie likes you, you're more than likely a Jay. Like Jays attract each other, So I thought that could be a solid answer. Yeah.
that's true. Us in the Google Docs.
Woohoo. Oh my gosh, I was so
Nice.
close.
Good job.
Very good job for both.
We were both we were both off by 1 letter.
Wow, that's fair. That's
So
fair in harmony as we Fs would have it. So just to recap, that's
mhm.
introverted, intuitive feeling, and judging for Alyssa. Some key words we've got is empathy, insightfulness, idealism, a rich inner world of thoughts, feelings, and ideas, highly attuned to the emotions of others, and have a talent for understanding and connecting with people, drawn to creative or humanitarian pursuits, desire to make the world a better place through their work and actions, but they may struggle with self doubt. So, Alyssa, how would you say this describes you?
Pretty spot on. But then again, also a very positive representation of this personality type.
And
Very diplomatic way of describing this
You
personality type.
mentioned you toggle between A and T. Would you lean more to one versus the other?
Uh-oh.
MJ, what do you think
I would
as it
say
stands?
A. Assertive.
I am T,
Oh, damn it. T's are really good at faking to be A's, I find.
which is why which is why we both guessed A for each other.
Yeah, do you
Oh
also go
man.
back and forth between A and T?
I do. I do. More
Mm.
recently I've leaned T pretty consistently though.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I have a question. Between E and I, what do you think prompted the switch to I?
It's a good question. I think as I was transitioning in my career, so when I first started off, I think I was just doe-eyed and hopeful for my career path and was so just kind of gung-ho and eager to learn. And I think as I got older, went through more situations in my career and work, naturally the introversion I think kind of took over. I'm more innately an introvert, I would say, but especially in the work environment, I do put a lot of effort to exude more extroversion, I guess. But yeah, I think innately I've always leaned more I.
Interesting. And is the ratio between E and I in your most recent assessment pretty even?
It's pretty heavily I now. I'm probably
Oh,
like,
okay.
yeah, I'm probably like 70% I.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Hmm.
And then, okay. Well, should we talk about Julie's MBTI first, and then dive into personalities a little bit more deeply afterwards?
Yeah. Julie, would you like to reveal yourself?
Yeah, I'll reveal myself here.
A
What
little,
do
a
you?
little bit more anticlimactic. I can try to guess it again because I don't think I
Oh,
remember.
I, sure. You
Mm.
can just don't look at your screen because I just typed it into ChatGPT.
Is it ISFJ?
Yeah, it is 100%. Yeah. Did you just not look at
This
your screen or
is such a
something?
wild guess.
Yeah.
It's the power of an ENFJ.
Right, right. Very intuitive. So ISFJ stands for introverted, sensing, feeling, and judging. So I would be very similar with Alyssa, except for the S. Keywords: practicality, dependability, sensitivity, grounded in the present moment, conscientious and responsible, strong work ethic, maintain harmony and stability, caregiving roles, loyalty and devotion, prioritize the needs of others above their own, struggle with asserting themselves and setting boundaries. So, honestly, for me, this does not resonate with me 100%. I would say,
Okay, interesting.
yeah. One disclaimer that I do want, or one fact I want to mention, is in the theory of Myers Briggs and my podcast teachers that I've had in the past have mentioned that your MBTI, in its fundament and theory, your MBTI doesn't change. It's like how you use your MBTI within situations that changes, and what skills you tend to fall back on change. But with that out of my system and that fire and passion for MBTI out of the way, I would say for my extroversion versus introversion, I lie very middle of that.
I
And
can
my
see
S
that.
and F are, yeah, my S and F are really strong, and then my J and P are kind of like borderline as well. Is what I think I've tried to work on it, and that's why it's more middle ground. It's not something that has always, like, I've been a lot more uptight before, and I'm trying really hard to just like let go of things. So I think that's why, like, this whole devotion and prioritizing needs of others. I'm a lot more selfish than that. And asserting myself and setting boundaries, while I could struggle with it, it's something that I think asserting myself, I do a pretty good job at. So in many ways, I'm not saying I just have all these strengths and no weaknesses, but I have other weaknesses that it's not characterized by what a typical ISFJ is.
I will just make a quick comment about your remark around selfishness. I will say a lot of people who are self aware to say, I am a lot more selfish than, putting others first, have often been the most putting others first type of people. Because they just understand, what's selfish and what's not selfish. So they're objectively able to kind of gauge, what decision has an impact on other people. So that's my take. And just knowing you, like, you're one of the least selfish people that I know. So I don't know if that assessment is fair, but just wanted to say for feel goods.
Thank you for your opinion.
The
I think
fact is,
I think I would
Yeah.
agree with that though, because yeah, just from the interactions that I've had with you, I think you are very self-aware. I don't know if I would necessarily say that translates as selfishness, even though you may feel that in a sea of other F's potentially, just because I think your S mind allows you to think through things a lot more pragmatically. So that's my 2 cents on that. And also, Julie, you are the only A in this room, which further, I think more accurately represents your personality when you put in the T and the A, and what those represent.
Yeah, I would say so too. I don't think I've ever toggled between A and T. I've been quite firmly A. I don't doubt my I don't ever look back and regret the decisions I made or second guess myself in what I do, to
wow.
the point to the painful point that I really should look back a little bit, assess and reassess, understand the situation better in my mind, and then move forward. I just don't do that.
I mean, they're pros and cons, but I that's like one thing that you said that I just can't relate to. Just like looking back at my decisions and doubting or just thinking if it could have gone the other way. And I also wonder if it's more of a S versus N thing too, like in addition to it being an A versus T thing. Because I feel like if you're an N, like driven by intuition, you kind of think introspectively about a lot of things as well.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of like big picture thinking. So there's a lot of different avenues and a lot of room to go back and think, well, if I would have taken this path versus this path, like what different outcome could have come out of it? Where I think when someone leans more to the S side, the sensing side, um, they've made their decision. Like that's the linear path, and I think that's honestly a superpower to not have to look back and
I
regret certain
agree.
decisions. Yeah, yeah,
I would also agree that having an S and like an auxiliary of A combination allows myself to sleep quite well at night. Thankfully, so. Thankfully, I'm not creative enough to go back and assess the situation and think of all the possibilities that could have, would have, should have. So
Mm.
when I hear you guys share with me your N and T combination type thoughts, my heart goes out to you guys. Like it, wow, it's tough. It's tough. While I totally understand and can empathize with what you guys are saying, I just can't relate to it. Is I think how I can put it best.
Mhm. That's so interesting.
hmm it keeps things interesting. But I think for myself and MJ, you can chime in if you're a little bit different. But for myself, I have to be very self aware of getting to the point where my past thinking starts getting self-debilitating and starts preventing
Mhm.
me from being present and moving forward and being productive with it.
No, totally, totally. I've on multiple occasions have had to stop myself from thinking, is this what actually happened or is this just made up in your head and just kind of blown out of proportion because you're adding so much color that's self-deprecating, in introspect. It's already happened, but you're adding so much color to make it a different experience altogether in your head.
Right, right. Yeah. Yep. I feel ya.
Yeah. And
Okay, so
I'm
you guys are really bouncing off each other, but could you help me understand what that
understand an
means?
example.
Like with an example, please.
Let's think of an example. So at work, for example, if I have an interaction with a client and I said something and the client reacted in a certain way that was unexpected, then you have already moved on from that conversation to another topic in real life. But once that call ends, then I would go back to that particular moment and that particular reaction from the client and think, what was it that I said that could have resulted in that? What could I have done differently? And kind of thinking that over and over again.
So, MJ, are you the type of person, if you have a bad interaction at work or something that kind of left a bad taste in your mouth, does that linger for the rest of the day for you?
I would think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Depends on who it is and what kind of a magnitude this person has on
Hmm.
my personal, like my relationship with that person, but usually, yeah. How about for you?
Yeah, I'm a chronic lingerer, if you will. Yeah, especially, I mean, I think this has this has a couple different layers, but for someone who puts so much of their worth and identity into their career, if I have a bad interaction at work or I feel like I messed up or I wasn't communicating the way that I wish I would have, that will tend to eat up at me for a little while, and I will sit there even after the workday is done or even a couple days later and just like wish that I could stop thinking about it. But yeah, that stuff gnaws at me.
Yeah, completely agree.
Julie has a really shocked look on her
I
face,
know.
like mind blown emoji right now.
So I understand that a bad interaction is going to have an effect on your mood and cause you to think and feel a certain way. But the extent to which I personally would reflect on it is very limited. And I'd love to understand what about it you guys are thinking about.
Just scenarios. And I think this goes
Like,
back to the S versus N, like where you're not daydreaming, but you're also just envisioning different ways that a certain situation could have gone. So if I said this, or like next time I will vow to do this differently, for
Hmm.
example, that's the resolution that I would come to often.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because I think the end side of me makes me process things a lot slower. So when I am finally able to process what had happened, that is when I'm able to come to a better conclusion of how I would have articulated myself had I had the time to process what was going on. And then I kick myself a lot for not being able to do that initially.
Exactly.
and in the future, do you guys typically tend to just implement your learnings, or how does that work for you after?
I try.
This is this is a very S type question. I'm sorry, I can't think
Yeah,
different.
certainly
Yeah.
try. Yeah.
Yeah, I
And when
try.
you have a similar situation, do you recall what you had experienced before? Like, is that still in your memory, or do you just is it just part of more of like an intuitive personality trait of yours? Like, do you just like absorb that learning as part of your being afterwards?
I would say it depends on the magnitude of the incident or the thing that I'm depends on the magnitude of the thing that happened that I'm thinking about. Oftentimes I do kind of forget and move on. I just spend a lot of time thinking about it, but ultimately I do move on personally. But if it's like a major, like an event that I had a blip on, for example, then I like to think that I retain the learning from it and apply next time.
Hmm. For you, is that for you too, Alyssa?
Yeah, I would say I'm pretty similar. I think I mean, this is one of the reasons why I tend to over index on past situations, because very rarely will that situation be duplicated. So very rarely will I be able to run into the very same scenario where I can
Mhm.
implement my learnings the way that I would have wanted to, which is why I think I look back a lot, because I'll never like I this is what eats at me, is like I'll never have the chance to react and respond the way that I feel like I want to.
Right. Wait, so Julie, you mean to tell me that you've never thought about a smarter comeback that you could have made during an argument post that argument? You're just like, that argument's done and dusted, and I'm ready to move on to another argument.
So I used to do that very often when I
Okay.
was a child, like when I was like 10. And no, not to say that, this is
No,
like
I
I
know, I
grew
know.
up from it, but it's to
Yeah.
say like I had a lot of it came from a place of spite or a place of just feeling attacked or vulnerable or just helpless. But as I grew to become an adult, thankfully, so my memory started to not be as good. My brain power, it was just fully used for just the present, and obviously my I had more limitations with my brain power. Perhaps I had a huge part to play. That said, when I do have a poor interaction at some point during my day, i'm i'm feeling I'm feeling the emotions and I'm feeling bad about it, but I dismiss a lot of it. And this is where I think, only a part of why I think I'm very selfish. I dismiss that person entirely. Like, that person is either an idiot or having a bad day or doesn't know how to communicate or like is incompetent to certain extents. And so I fault them in many ways as to why they conducted themselves poorly. And then subconsciously, like, it's still going, but I'm never actively thinking about it. But perhaps by the end of the day, I'll just be like, you know what, next time I'll just clarify for them the situation that's going on so that they understand how the way that they're acting is having an impact on our relationship, and that that's not conducive for them either if they want something out of this. So that's when I have my action plan of okay, this is how I'm going to deal with it next time. And that's where I end. And you'll notice that there's a lot of self-reflection and self, like, faulting that is missing from that. And I'm
Mm.
not proud of it, but it's, for me, I also feel like it's such a waste of energy to think about it over and over again, to Alyssa's point, when it's not going to happen again. So I just don't do it because I just mentally, and my husband has shared with me, like, a very good term, I can't multi-think. I can only think about one thing at a time. So if it's just like that one thing that I'm just going to get out of it, then that's it. Like, I can't scenario the situation out.
It's just a different way of processing, though, right? Like I don't
Mhm.
necessarily think that your way of processing is a less sensitive way, but it's very interesting because Julie, what you just like articulated was, when a situation arises with a negative effect, you look at the person's behavior as a them problem, whereas we look at our reaction as an us problem.
Mhm. Mhm.
And like our line of thought just goes in opposite directions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's not good,
No,
honestly.
I think to Alyssa's point, it's
Yeah,
just different. It's not like good versus bad. It's just different. Like, I read
sure.
this book.
Yeah,
It's called "How to Not Give a Fuck." I think it's what it's
yeah.
called.
Ah, yes.
A pretty
Mark N
famous,
or something.
Mark Ronson or
yes,
Mark
self-help
something.
book.
Yeah. Yep.
And I read it during a time of like I just place way too much emphasis on how others might perceive my actions and give myself zero credit for how I perceive their actions to begin with. And I think the mindset that you have when you approach certain interactions, and kind of identifying, that the fault of that interaction doesn't necessarily lie with yourself, is one of the messages that the book described that I found very helpful. So just being able to say, actually, I am not the one necessarily leading to an issue here, sometimes helps. So I think it's just a different perspective on approaching issues.
Yeah, I agree. Because there's this one quote that's like, what happens to you, or there's like, it's like 10% of what happens to you is the scenario, and then 90% of it is how you react.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Hmm. Yeah, but honestly, it could be me that reacted poorly. And yeah, I think that's unavoidable. And
You're speaking like a T right now, and I'm questioning your A versus T ratio right now.
is it the ice wine
yeah,
speaking? Like, what's
Yeah, is this the ice wine speaking?
well, this goes a little back, but like or a little deep, but I've had my family share that with me. Like I've been too selfish or too uh you know, too uh how do you say 뻔뻔해? Too brazen? Like
brazen?
yeah,
Sure.
to like that the fact that I've been way too brazen with my myself or how I conduct myself or my lack of thinking for others. And I understand that to be something that bothers the people closest to me. So I think that's where a lot of that guilt comes from in on that selfish department. But enough about me. I'd love to
Wait,
talk
wait, sorry. Can I
about
just add one comment, because this is not the note
yes.
that I want to end on for you, on this particular topic. I just want to say that like brazenness that you talk about doesn't mean, like, I think you're such a self-aware person, and this is my kind of interpretation of, what you're describing. I think you're so self-aware that you understand your needs extremely well. And what happens is that because you understand your needs extremely well, others feel like their needs feel maybe neglected as a result, because you articulate and you take care of your needs extremely well. But I don't think that means you're costing them anything, or it becomes like at the expense of others. It just becomes like you as a priority, you taking care of yourself. So I, I think you painted that characteristic in a negative light, maybe in the purest like Asian like self-deprecating manner, but I do think there's a lot of value in it that I could learn from. For example, just being able to, like, one of my downsides in my character assessment was not being able to set boundaries well, or being run over. Like, for example, like, I feel like there's a lot to learn from each other, and that side that you're describing has a lot to learn from as well.
Yeah, that brazenness is not very widely accepted, I feel like, in traditional Asian culture in general. So I would
Hmm.
not let that standard be what negatively impacts the perception you have of yourself because you have that characteristic.
Thank you guys. This is why I have you as my friends, just to tell me all the good stuff. To blind me from my flaws and allow me to just keep being not developing further, but just making do with anyway. Okay, so we wanted to end on a very good note on that. So let me not just downfall myself again. But honestly, like we've got the commonality of the last two letters, which is feeling and judging. And I thought that was a
Hmm.
really interesting combination because it's something that I find quite common in the friends around me.
Mm.
And the friends around me tend to be, and generally speaking, quite empathetic go getters, which is an interesting dynamic if you think about it. And we've talked about work and the career quite a lot so far in the conversation. And I have a proposal, my proposal for you guys on some of the topics. And this was my meeting with ChatGPT, and this is where we kind of get into some of the,
Can I ask a question in the
of
meantime?
course.
Please.
What do you think is the most important letter in the MBTI spectrum that determines like your success in your career?
Oh, I love this
Oh,
question.
in terms of career, I feel like in terms of career and in terms of a relationship, I would have two different answers.
Okay, okay. Let's go with those two questions then.
In terms of career, I would say S versus N, depending on what career path you want to go on. And then relationship,
Mm,
F versus T.
that is so interesting.
And is that for you personally, Alyssa, or do you think that's just more a general observation?
It might be a little bit of both. I think I'm speaking more from because I am an NF. I'm speaking from the weaknesses that I know I have in the workplace because I am those types.
Is that a T thing for you to focus on your weaknesses?
Potentially, potentially. What do you guys think for what letter determines success in workplace versus relationship?
I think it's very job specific. Like
Yeah.
my initial kind of thought was E versus I, in kind of like the banking space where relationships matter so much more than, not so much more, but your ability to execute and then your ability to make relationships sometimes commingle, and then your ability to make relationships are kind of considered success factors in the job, on the job. I think that's why I thought E versus I, but I also think J versus P. And no, actually, I'm gonna stick with E versus I, and then for friendships, I'm gonna agree with you, T versus F.
Hmm.
I think the reason why, because I also thought E versus I for workplace, but for me, when I look at E versus I think more of the individual person and how they absorb energy versus how they're able to relate and communicate.
Yeah,
So, yeah, like I do think people can be pretty chronic I's, but still have pretty good social skills, and then vice versa.
yeah, yeah. Sorry, let me just add a little bit of
Hmm.
what I meant by E versus I in kind of the like the space that I work in. I just feel like a lot of relationships become born out of extensive, almost unnecessary social events in the
Mm,
space that I work in, and I feel like those types of platforms are very conducive to E types of personalities versus I. I feel like both personalities are perfectly capable of making meaningful relationships with the same type of person, but if the platform given to you to form those relationships off the bat is, you know, those like extensive, like small chat
yeah.
oriented cocktail hours, I feel like it's limiting. And it's coming from like me also being personally split between E and I, because I struggle in those situations depending on, what the environment kind of
Yeah.
caters to.
Yeah, I see what you're saying because those happy hours can be like absolute hell for for an
Yeah.
eye.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like by the end of like 1 hour, you're like your energy's kind of sucked out of you, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have much left in you to carry on.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I agree. Julie?
Wow, I feel like this is a very like N type discussion, but let me try to contribute. So if I could bring my very linear, one-sided type of lens into this, before I heard you guys' opinions, which I think really kind of shake my own, is it's whatever trait that's missing in the group. For me, in my last role, that was my S, because oftentimes people would rely on me in the meetings to then summarize what's going on or keep everyone in check or then bring all those concepts and then bring it into more of an action plan. So these were traits that I tried to double down on as I saw it fit. And perhaps that's more of an SJ type of personality trait that I had that brought it to a strength within the team. But honestly, you guys have such great points around if the work environment is something that requires a ton of social activity for you to have success in your career and to be able to sustain your energy levels on a day-to-day basis, 100%, right? But if, for example, you believe that a very hardcore, straightforward type of like ST personality is required to be on the grind and get the hustle done, I totally think that that is a trait as well. So this is the SME very respectful of the depth that you guys can handle, and just not being able to then like come back to it and formulate my own opinions because of my lack of ability to overthink. But yeah, that's my one ascent into the conversation.
I would say that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
Cool.
So what
I don't
about
know what you're noticing.
yeah. So what about personal relationships then? What do you think is kind of the overarching?
I would say I versus E. And that
Okay.
Interesting.
and I say that because when you're in a relationship, the proximity to each other is a very interesting and important dynamic. How close do you need to be to each other? How much of each other can you handle is a stressor or like an energizer. And do you need to be with each other with other people all at the same time, aka E, or is it just each other, or even like away from each other and completely alone, aka I? And what's that balance look like? If
Sure.
that balance is off put, to me, that's quite difficult for each other to come to terms with.
Interesting.
Interesting.
But that's a really great perspective. That's a really great perspective though, because Julie, you are kind of like a relationship predecessor in this room. So
Yeah.
so you would know a little. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Even for
yeah.
friendships, would you say that? So like any type
No,
of personal
because
relationship you would go off of. Okay.
yeah, no, I would say this would be for like my main my main
Your
relationship. Can I
your
call
main
it?
squeeze.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Oh God. I
because
started
as
knowing
I've shared,
Jay. I
like
just like imagined him as a squeeze, and I was like, oh God.
all good, all good. I'm sure he understands. The the thing, actually, yeah, because I've mentioned like a lot of my friends are FJs, and to me
Mhm.
that has been extremely consistent with the majority of the people that I tend to get along with or attract or tend to bond with, because the whole empathy and sharing things and then sharing that passion and drives, because we are typically talking about the hardships in life, or reflecting on ourselves, and then or going through things, and really bouncing off each other's empathy. And then we also talk about like health, career, relationship, and that's like a quite a J way of thinking through things and categories and planning. And uh, yeah, so in that case, for me and my friends, that's an FJ, or the last two letters type importance.
I think from me, friendship wise and like romantic relationship wise, the priority letter will change. So I think for friends, J and P actually become the most common source of frustration for me. The difference between maybe the J and then the P personalities. And then in romantic relationships, I'm going to change my answer and I'm going to say S versus N is more important.
Ooh. Wow.
Oh,
So So then, okay. Oh, wow, interesting. Does the J and the P become a source of frustration for you because you are a J, and then if you attract P's, all of the work
Yes.
ends up going on you?
Absolutely.
Got it. Can empathize. Yes. I still really look at the F and the T
Mm.
because I really struggle with people who are too much of T thinkers sometimes. Um, and I think that's with friendships and romantic relationships.
So I will share that my husband is an INTP, which means the only character that we share is an I. And actually, I wasn't thinking of this as I was answering the question. It is it
Interesting.
is freaking frustrating to have somebody that is an NTP. Oh, we could do a whole series on this, but in summary and in its extract, we've made a lot of the NTP versus SFJ work. It was explainable. It was some things that we could weave around each other and explain. But something like the I versus E, like if we were one person was very E and one person was very I, in which case that's more my husband, is something I think we couldn't have handled. Like in terms of us, like the us dynamic, and so that's I think where I come from in the importance of I versus E, which was not a very anyway. Okay, yeah,
And this is coming from a place of you being relatively evenly split between E and I, though, right? And you're still
that is
saying it
true.
matters a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
it does matter a lot to me. Like if he was, I lean more I, obviously because of my ISFJ, but if he was super E and just wanted to go out all the time and drag me out there with him, I would just not, I would be so tired the whole relationship or frustrated. But fortunately, I'm only frustrated like once a week or twice. Yeah.
Okay,
There
okay. I'm
you
gonna
go.
stop you right there before you incriminate yourself.
You're gonna PR me.
Yep.
So I think we ended up going on a great deep dive of our MBTIs and how we think of them in terms of how they impact our relationships and what we value. On our next episode, I'd love to get to know how we respond to different situations in the workplace and how that kind of reflects back to our MBTI. Anything else you guys want to add?
No, I'm just really excited to get into how this affects me on my job and how I interact with others on the job.
Sweet. Stay tuned on the next episode of Soulful Sips.
Sip sip.
오늘도 수고했어.
That was beautiful. Brought tears to my eyes.